Hey there guys, Nick here from Absolute MTG, and today we're going to be taking a look at a deck tech for Abzan Control for the Magic Origins Season of Standard. Now that Magic Origins is finally out, well, Abzan Control pretty much looks the same for me, so not a whole lot has actually changed here, and the only card that I'm utilizing from the new set is actually just Languish. So some people have been playtesting with Nissa and trying to see where they can actually go with playing that, and having some tutoring for lands as well as a effective 3-mana Planeswalker for the late game. However, I've tried to stick true to the deck that I've been playing thus far, and the archetype of Abzan Control here. So without further ado, we'll take a look at our creatures and what we're playing here. So first off, we have 3 Den Protectors, which allow us to recur stuff from our graveyard, whether it's a removal spell like Ultimate Price, Hero's Downfall, or Abzan Charm, or a creature like Siege Rhino or Tasigur. It allows us to get back some cards from our grave, whether our opponent got them out of our hand with like Thoughseize or something, or we just lost them through the course of the game. We have 4 Courser of Kruphix to provide us some help in the attrition war by playing lands off the top of our library, as well as gaining us back some life. 4 Siege Rhino, which is kind of the centerpiece in these types of decks. It's just the most efficient powerhouse creature that we have in this color combination, and it does the most for us as far as applying pressure to our opponent, as well as allowing us to gain back some life as well. We have 2 Tasigur, which plays off of us putting stuff into our graveyard, using our spells, our removal for our opponent's creatures, and otherwise just cracking fetch lands and searching for other lands within our deck. We can fuel up our Tasigur, delve into him, and play him for a cheap casting cost, as well as uses activated ability to get some stuff back from our grave at our opponent's cost of having to figure out what they're going to allow us to actually take back. For Planeswalkers in the main board, I'm playing 3 Elspeth Summons Champion, which has pretty much been the normal thing that I've been going for quite some time. It's either been that or like 1 Garruk Apex Predator. However, I do still like the 3 Elspeths just because it's removal with the -3 ability. It also applies pressure with the +1 ability and muddles up the board, and can effectively just be a win condition on its own. As far as the other spells in the deck, we have 4 Thoughseize to allow us to take away what our opponent has in hand, as well as give us information for what's coming in the future couple of turns. 2 Ultimate Price for monocolored creatures. Now with the release of Origins, I feel like a lot of people are going to try to mess around with goblins or mono blue strategies, so the Ultimate Price seems pretty good right now. 1 Mastery of the Unseen for the slower decks. Mastery allows us to not really do anything for our turns and basically play at the end of our opponent's turn, which is great, and especially against the control decks, because they can't counter the activated ability, Mastery ends up being pretty strong. For removal, we have 4 Heroes Downfall to get rid of a creature or planeswalker at instant speed. 4 Abzan Charm to be able to have a bunch of different modes, mainly the removal, but also being able to draw cards and make our creatures bigger if combat math is something that we need. 2 Languish, which is our new addition from Magic Origins, allowing us to get rid of a lot of different things that we actually may run into. Great against the mono-green devotion strategies and whatnot. It gets rid of all of the problematic things that we might have encountered before, but we couldn't really deal with. It's especially good up against like Fleecemane Lions and Deathmist Raptors that our opponents may be playing in the Abzan Morph variants. And it just really deals with a whole lot. It does kill our stuff as well. It'll kill our Courser and our Den Protector. However, it won't kill our Siege Rhino or our Tasigur unless our opponent does something for a turn. So the Languish ends up being super, super strong against the decks that are playing smaller creatures and anybody that's playing mainboard Fleecemane Lion or anything like that. I'm running 1 Utter End just kind of as a catch-all for any permanents that our opponents have that are problematic, whether it's a Planeswalker or a creature or anything in the in-between. The Other End pretty much just gets rid of the stuff that we don't want our opponent to have, and especially that we don't want them to recur with Den Protector. And also a one of End Hostilities. So End Hostilities ended up being the switch over Crux of Fate because a lot of people were playing red-green aggro strategies where they were playing like Elvish Mystic into Goblin Rabblemaster in the early game, and then Thunderbreak Regent and Stormbreath Dragon in the late game. So I decided to cut the Crux of Fate and just turn it into End Hostilities and just give you another board wipe for the Devotion strategies and any of the more aggressive decks that can't really deal with the End Hostilities type effects. And now for the sideboard. So with this sideboard, I kind of have a pretty interesting selection of cards that I've really enjoyed playtesting with thus far. So first off, we have Drown in Sorrow, which is for the aggressive strategies, the mono red slide decks, and the people that are just trying to jam goblins early in the format here. Drown in Sorrow does a really good job at just sweeping things in the early game, or even in the late game if your opponents build up a board state that is just looking quite intimidating horizontally. We have one of Pharika's here for being able to gain back some life and also just have another card that 1-for-1 trades with one of your opponent's small aggro creatures. 2 Bile Blight for any overlapping that your opponent may have when they're playing stuff like token strategies and otherwise just aggro again. 2 Fleecemane Lion, so even though Languish deals with Fleecemane Lion pretty effectively, you can almost assume that your opponent's not really going to be playing as many Languish against you going into Game 2 and Game 3. So you can side in your Fleecemane Lions up against like the mirror match or against like the control variants because they'll likely side out some number of their Languish. And if you show your opponent Fleecemane Lion on Game 2, then it's up to you whether or not you want to go into Game 3 actually playing it. However, the Fleecemane Lion is still super strong up against control decks and the grindy mid-range decks just because it's really hard to get rid of whenever it comes in the late game, and keeping your opponent from actually being able to get rid of it whenever you have 5 mana open is just a perfect way to play out the game. 2 Duress, just to be able to pick away at your opponent's hand whenever you're playing, more specifically up against control. I don't really side in the Duress as exclusively for the mid-range matchups, especially because Dem Protector decks are just so abundant. But the Duress is super great up against the control decks within the format. And as for Planeswalkers and other interesting cards that we have here, I'm playing one of Ugin, and the Ugin comes in for the decks where you expect to go for a long and grindy game, or even just like the Devotion decks. Ugin ends up being just a perfect way to clear out their entire board and leave them with nothing, especially if they've just been slamming like mana dorks for the past couple of turns anyway. Ugin is just really great. The only thing that's awkward about it is running into Whisperwood Elemental and a bunch of Manifest guys. But otherwise, Ugin ends up being just a perfect powerhouse card to slam on the table and just get rid of everything your opponent has. I have 2 Sorin Solemn Visitor kind of acting as a pseudo Whip of Erebos in the sideboard, so I really like this card just in theory as Whip of Erebos just because I like to have it as life gain for the more aggressive matchups that I might run into, while at the same time, even for the mid-range style matchups where your opponent's trading 1-for-1 removal with your cards, the Sorin provides 2 bodies in 1 and 2 threats that your opponent actually has to deal with for the 1 cost that you're actually paying for it, because he makes 2/2 tokens with the -2 ability that he actually has. So thus far, I've really liked the Sorin Solemn Visitor. I haven't really found a solid reason to just switch to Whip of Erebos exclusively, and he ends up being quite a easy way to overwhelm your opponent most times, especially if you're already ahead. I have a 1-of for Nissa Worldwaker as well, so the Nissa is pretty much exclusively for the grindy mid-range matchups. It's just another card that, again, provides 2 kind of threats in 1 card. You're able to turn your lands and any excessive lands that you have into 4/4s and then just start turning them sideways against your opponent, and you really have to force them to either deal with the lands themselves or deal with Nissa, but you even still just get to retain one thing or another if your opponent just only has 1 removal spell for that given turn. And the last sideboard slot that I have here is dedicated to Pharika and a whole lot of jackassery. So I've basically just been playing this card as a 1-of in the sideboard for the Deathmist Raptor Dem Protector decks. So the Reanimator style decks that are just going to be able to utilize raw power and raw advantage off of recurring their Deathmist Raptors even whenever you go and Hero's Downfall them or Ultimate Price them. You want to have the Pharika just because giving them a 1/1 Death Touch creature is much better than allowing them to get back their 3/3 or potentially 4/4 Deathmist Raptor onto the battlefield and being able to just do a whole lot more with recursion. So being able to just exile it out of their graveyard is just really, really clutch most times, and Although it's just a really awful and horrible scavenging ooze, it's served its purpose thus far in testing, and I've actually really liked it just as a sideboard slot. Whether or not it's actually a 14-card sideboard or a 15-card sideboard because I'm playing the Pharika is kind of up in the air. However, I have liked it just as a one-of-Jackass slot in the sideboard. So that about does it for my update here for Abzan Control as far as Magic Origins is concerned and what I'm playing for the start of the new format. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Magic the Gathering content. The entire deck list is going to be down in the description below where you guys can check it out and use it as a reference. And remember to check out some of the other links down in the description below as well. Until next time, guys, thank you for watching and peace out.